have you along this morning, and we'll get to a number of things. For those of you, if you're just catching us for the first time, we're at KELO in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and we'll be talking about both local and national issues. I'd appreciate a thumbs up if you enjoy what we're doing. The show hasn't actually started yet. You will not hear audio of the entire broadcast. You're going to be just hearing audio through my phone. But I thank you for being here. Thank you very much. We're going to talk for folks in the South Dakota and Iowa area, Minnesota as well. Flooding really has been the big story. Yesterday, of course, was election day in a number of states. I'll run down some of the details as to who the winners are. Also, we've got the U.S. Surgeon General declaring gun violence a public health crisis. Vivek Murthy, in an interview with CBS yesterday, said that he wants the United States to ban automatic rifles. Now, you do understand that automatic rifles have already been banned in this country, right? I mean, the left just keeps talking. What he's talking about, and what a lot of focus is on semi-automatic weapons, not automatic weapons. Those have already been. You need to have a special license in order to buy automatic weapons in the United States. Those are not legally. The weapons that are legally owned are not the cause of the violence that we see. So it's an absolute. That's a big story. We're going to talk about that. And I'll take your phone calls later in the program. Also, Donald Trump talking about the debate, which is coming up tomorrow night. And so the president has been very heavily involved in debate prep. Donald Trump talked to Newsmax, told them he has been preparing for this debate his entire life, Donald Trump said. So The Hill has a story this morning saying, what can we expect from the first debate? What are the two candidates going to do? In a word, attack, says The Hill. Whether or not that's what we'll see. Also, there's a great story at justthenews.com this morning about the Jake Tapper and things that he's one of the he'll be one of the moderators of the debate tomorrow night, Jake Tapper. Dana Bash will be the other. And he has said some things that are really kind of catching up with him. So also, New York Times has a story today that the killing of this Texas girl, this 12-year-old Texas girl, has become a new immigration flashpoint. And did you see the judge now, the second suspect who's accused of killing this 12-year-old girl? He now has also received a $10 million bond, both of them. The judge giving them $10 million in bond. So it's been a very big story. The New York Times is saying that immigration now has become a big issue because of what happened. So that's a very quick look at the big stories. I'll get into those in more detail as we get the show underway this morning. But again, I appreciate you being here. Please give me a thumbs up if you like what we're doing, or dislike it if you don't. All right, I'm going to get set here and we'll start rolling. And again, I apologize that you are not able to hear the entire audio of what's going on. You're not hearing the actual live stream of KELO AM. What you are hearing is just me through my phone.
Weather brought to you by the Window Shop of Mitchell, offering custom windows starting at $99 a month.
Partly cloudy skies today for the Sioux Falls area. Our high temperature at 81 with a north wind at 5 to 10. For tonight, low around 60. There could be some scattered hits of rain toward daybreak. Tomorrow, a good chance of scattered shower and thunderstorm activity with a high of 76. More scattered rain tomorrow night. That's the latest on your weather from the Storm Center at Kibble-Land TV. I'm meteorologist Brian Karstens.
The world comes at you pretty fast. We'll help you make sense of it all. Kello, News Talk 1320, 107.9, and Kello.com. The Doctor of Discernment is on the air.
Tell you what, I don't know about you, but I'm going to go to bed.
The Biden administration has a fatal attraction to nutty ideas.
Dispensing a daily dose of common sense, no prescription required.
I love the show.
I don't hate going to work anymore.
Americans love a winner and will not tolerate a loser. Americans play to win all the time.
I don't believe in the no-win scenario.
This is the Greg Belfrage Show.
Good morning, my friend. The marketplace of ideas is open. It's great to have you along this morning. Welcome to the Greg Belfrage Show. Also, yesterday was election day in a number of states: South Carolina, New York, Utah, Colorado. So just very briefly giving some of the results. One of the most high-profile primaries yesterday was in New York, where Representative Jamal Bowman lost. He lost. He was a member of the squad. He's the first member of the squad not to win a primary election. So Jamal Bowman, he had said some particularly outrageous things here in the last few days. If you had seen and heard some of that audio, it's like, what in the... So anyway, he lost to a centrist Democrat, George Latimer, who won in New York's 16th district. Also, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez won her primary. In Colorado, Representative Lauren Boebert won her primary. And now remember, she had moved to another district, and she now will replace retired Representative Ken Buck for a full term. And also, I think that those are the big. There's some other races that were underway as well. So more of those will be revealed as the day goes on, I think. Also, yesterday, Governor Kristi Noem held a news conference. We have had incredible flooding, as you are very much aware, not only in South Dakota, but extending down into Iowa, Minnesota, and the flooding has just been overwhelming. So Governor Noem gave an update on the flooding in Yankton. She was in Yankton yesterday, held a news conference late yesterday afternoon. And she said that officials were informed of different cresting times for the rivers. And the James, the Vermilion, and the Big Sioux rivers crested earlier than anticipated and at different times from each other. So the James River was the last of those three to crest, and it reached its peak early yesterday morning, she said. And the governor said the state now is working with 30 counties in assessing total damage done, submitting their reports to FEMA. And she said we have to, some of this is a little bit redundant, but she said she's looking at McCook Lake as her highest priority. She described how they underestimated the damage that it would undergo. Again, it's McCook and Lake counties she's looking at. She said they're currently working on a time for residents to obtain their belongings from within their homes and is encouraging people to stay away from the damage. She made it a point then to thank law enforcement, emergency personnel, and she's reminding individuals that you see the barricades, don't pass the barricades. I mean, we say this until we're blue in the face, and people will do it anyway. And unfortunately, do not pass the barricades. Those barricades are up for a reason. And the governor is reminding everybody, do not pass the barricades. You see barricades that are up, it means the road is closed. Don't try to traverse it, especially if it's underwater. You don't know what's going on underneath that water. So now, especially in places where the floodwaters are pretty significant. You know, in some cases, you get water over the road. Now, the barricade's up again. Barricade is up. Do not try to pass the barricades. but an incredible amount of people do. So the governor giving an update yesterday afternoon. Also, the U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy yesterday declared gun violence a public health crisis, he says. Gun violence is now a public health crisis. And for those of you who follow me on Facebook, I'd love to get your reaction to this. I asked that question this morning. What do you think? Is it a public health crisis? And he went on to say he wants warnings on firearms. Wants to have warnings on firearms. And seriously, I mean, of the violence that we are seeing, gun-related violence that is occurring throughout the country, you think a warning on firearm really is going to prevent that? This is the left's approach to everything. And Dr. Murthy had said early on that he was not going to go after guns. Became an issue then when he became Surgeon General and he was going through confirmation hearings and all of that. No, he was not going to be going after guns. Here he is. He's going after guns. I don't think that's any surprise. It's not to me, and especially not a surprise coming from what we have from this administration and the things that we have seen from this administration. It's just absolutely incredible. So he told CBS yesterday, he was on CBS Mornings, and he said, people are scared in many communities I visit around the country to do normal things like go to school or the grocery store or work, and they're worried about the risk to their life, he said. So he called on the U.S. to ban automatic rifles. Automatic rifles are not available in the United States unless you've got to have a special permit, and they're incredible, a federal firearms license, which are incredibly hard to get. Automatic weapons are not available to people in this country. What is he talking about banning automatic weapons? Generally, now what we have seen is that semi-automatic weapons, which means if you're not a gun owner, you might not be familiar with the jargon. So if you're not a gun owner, semi-automatic weapon means you've got to depress the trigger every time you want to fire the weapon, right? So you're depressing the trigger every time you want to fire the weapon. That's a semi-automatic weapon. Now that we are starting to refer to those as automatic weapons, they're not automatic weapons. Automatic weapons, are there people who have automatic weapons? Oh, yes. In defiance then of laws that we already have. And here's the thing about criminals. They're going to continue to break the law. I mean, this is why we put them in prison, right? I mean, this is why we've got jails. So gun violence, a public epidemic, he's saying now it's an urgent health crisis. Urgent health crisis. Gun violence. And I would say, it is an urgent problem for the country. There's no question about that. Is it a health crisis? And what are your thoughts on what the Surgeon General declared yesterday? So we'll talk about that in more detail coming up this morning. And for those of you who follow me on Facebook, I asked that question there. And I would appreciate your answers. I hope to share some of those coming up as we talk about this. We'll open up the phone lines a little bit later in the program. This is a big story. So there's an interesting piece by Stephen Cruiser at PJ Media. I like Stephen Cruiser a lot. I check the morning briefing daily. I don't always share it, but I check it every morning. He's got interesting things to say. And he said, as we get closer to whatever is going to happen next November, a good number of sane Americans are politely and frequently saying, buy ammo. to each other. He said it used to be buy guns and ammo, but most would agree that it's time to focus right now. And then he gets into talking about this proclamation then by the Surgeon General claiming that gun violence a public health crisis. It certainly is a problem for the country. Again, I don't. Those of us who are watching what we see transpiring around the country understand that, yeah, there's some grim things that are going on out there. I mean, we've got a law enforcement is, up to their necks, especially in some parts of the country, dealing with gun violence. But the idea that it's a public health crisis, very, very curious to get your thoughts on that this morning. All right, other stories that are out there. We are preparing, of course, for the debate, the presidential debate, which will take place tomorrow night. And the President Joe Biden, has been doing debate prep. And we've really not seen him here for the last, 4 or 5 days at least. That we have not seen the president. He's not been out there, not been visible. He's resting, he's preparing, and Donald Trump talked about it. He had an interview with Newsmax yesterday, and he said of this debate, Trump said, I've been preparing for it my whole life. If you want to know the truth, he said. And I'm not sure you can lock yourself in a room for 2 weeks or 1 week or 2 days and really learn what you have to know. Trump said, I've been through it. And he said, I know the subject matter. And he said, they may get cute because the debate's obviously at CNN. And I've called it fake news for a long time, but we'll see how they do it. They have a lot at stake, to be fair. I think they have to be fair. Will CNN be fair? And this is what a number of people are saying. CNN does not have a good track record, but okay, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see how the debate goes and whether or not they will be fair. This is what some are saying. Some are saying, CNN, I'm not even going to watch. I've heard from some people who have said, some of you have emailed me and said, I don't plan to watch CNN. Can't trust CNN. But I will be there. I have mentioned this the last few days. I'm very, very interested to see what's going to transpire, what will happen. And not only, again, Donald, and I spoke about this at length yesterday, I already know what Donald Trump is about, and I know what Donald Trump is going to say, and I've been supporting Donald Trump. So I don't expect anything, from him to be new. I mean, I know where he's at on the issues. I'm curious how the president's going to do. How is Joe Biden going to do? Is he going to be able to last 90 minutes and be coherent? I mean, we see even, and this is recently, within the last few weeks, he was speaking at the White House and he gets off into, it's like, what? What was that? I mean, he can, obviously, if we see anything like that during the debate, and I'm just, again, I am just perplexed as to why Democrats are pinning their hopes on this guy. Just shocking. So they're gearing up. The Hill's got a story this morning and talking about the president and Donald Trump both gearing up for this debate. And what can we expect? And what are their plans? What are their plans for the debate? And they say it boils down to one word: attack. They say Biden is expected to put the spotlight on Trump's role in appointing the Supreme Court justices who helped overturn Roe v. Wade. He is hitting that issue. That's the only thing he's got. He's got nothing else. He can't point to the economy and say, wow, you're paying less at the supermarket now than you ever have in years. You can't point to it. The border is an absolute disaster. He can't point to anything other than what happened with the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court ruling. He's blaming Donald Trump for that. And Donald Trump has been very much, let's leave it up to the states. The states should be able to decide that issue of abortion. Leave it up to the states. Some states are going to say no. Some states are going to say yes. They're going to allow abortion. And so and again, I think this is an issue for the Democrat Party and the left in this country. The just absolute hysteria that they are having over this, as if abortion now is no longer available. That's not the case. It's not the case. It'll never be the case in this country. What the Supreme Court said is, let's leave it to states to decide. So if that's the best that Joe Biden has during this debate tomorrow night, again, it's going to fire up, I think, the left is that going to be enough then to get them to go vote? That's really going to be the question. So Donald Trump, they say, is expected to throw punches at Biden's record on immigration and inflation, which I think is smart. But I think Donald Trump also has got to do that with a smile on his face. So what do you expect from CNN? I'm curious to know. JustTheNews.com has a story this morning about Jake Tapper in particular. Things that Jake Tapper has said are now catching up with him. And there's going to be a lot of scrutiny. Jake Tapper, it'll be interesting to see as to whether or not Jake Tapper is going to be able to get away with things that he has done in the past during this debate tomorrow night. We'll see. I don't want to say that'll be the case. I don't have a lot of faith in. I don't like Jake. I mean, as a broadcaster, I don't like Jake Tapper. I don't appreciate his point of view. The word I use generally for folks like him are smarmy. He's a kind of a smarmy kind of. But that's my personal impression of Jake Tapper. We'll see if he's able to tone down the smarmy coming up to, tomorrow night. I'm not banking on it. Seriously, I'm not. Also coming up this morning, this has really been a big story. We've got those two men who are charged with murder in the death of a 12-year-old girl from Texas. And a judge yesterday set a bond at $10 million for the second suspect. She had also set a $10 million bond for the first suspect. That was news yesterday. And so now the New York Times has got a story this morning. And I think they're right here in the headline in this story. And they say the killing of this 12-year-old Houston girl has really ignited the debate on illegal immigration and what's going on and what we see happening at the borders. And so again, you have the New York Times saying this, a presidential debate tomorrow night. It would be hard to imagine that Donald Trump is not going to bring up that issue during the debate tomorrow night. How is Joe Biden going to defend, the people that he has led into the country? Not saying all folks who have come into the country illegally, commit these kinds of heinous crimes. And again, they'll stay on trial. It's yet to be proved at this point. We'll see. But when you're letting in people by the millions who literally are not being vetted, this is the kind of thing that you can expect. And I think President Joe Biden has got a lot to answer here when it comes to that issue. And the question, I think, will be, will Donald Trump be able to hold his feet to the fire during the debate coming up tomorrow night? We'll see. So that's a look at the big stories this morning. This hour of the Greg Belfrage Show brought to you by the Window Shop of Mitchell, offering custom windows starting at $99 a month. 626, partly cloudy, and 68 currently at Kello. And you're listening to the Greg Belfrage Show.
Weekend 6 to 9 p.m. Kello.
All right, that's our first segment, and we are in a commercial break right here. We got a news and information update on the way. Also, a look at trending stories yet this hour. If you're new to the stream, thanks for being here. I appreciate it very much. Great to have you along. Please give me a like. Hit that like button. Smash that like button if you're watching. If you don't like it, give me a thumbs down. But your reactions are really important and appreciated. Now, I don't know what happened yesterday. We had an incredibly large number of viewers yesterday morning. I mean, far, far more than I normally have. And I don't know what happened. I don't know what's responsible for that, but I checked this shortly after I got off the air yesterday morning, and about 180 people had seen at least a portion of yesterday's program. How that happened, I have no idea, because that's a small number of folks, and that's what I expected. Those who listen to the Greg Belfrage Show on a daily basis. So I don't know what happened yesterday, but we just had an incredible amount of people that were tuning in. And I appreciate it. It's great to have you along. All right. I need a little bit of my Go juice here.
Do you have over $10,000 in credit card debt? If you're feeling the financial impact with unprecedented,
I'm a morning coffee drinker, so I love my coffee.
Success guarantee, you pay nothing unless your debt is reduced or completely resolved. I'm just living style right now. I'm very thankful.
All right, coming up, we're going to run down stories that are trending.
Call for your free debt resolution information now.
So it gives you a little broader look. A lot of it is election news. So there are not nearly as many stories as we would have on a normal day, because a lot of what's trending are election stories. And if you're not in the areas where those elections occurred, you really don't, it's hard to care about them too much, you know what I mean?
That's your weather update from the Storm Center at Kettledan TV. I'm Brian Carson.
And in Sioux Falls at 629, partly cloudy skies and 68 currently at Kello. Joe Bowman is in the Kello.com news center. Coming up, Joe has details on the recount of 3 Republican primary races in Minnehaha County. That is complete. None of the races flipped. Also, South Dakota lawmakers are grappling with ways to protect children as they navigate social media and online resources. An assisted man has been sentenced to 10 years in prison for the death of a child in 1992. So Joe will have details on those stories and more coming up for you in a few minutes. You're listening to the Greg Belfrage Show on Kello.
Foster. Progressive New York House Democrat Jamal Bowman loses his primary to George Latimer, a centrist county executive backed by pro-Israel groups.
Colorado Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert survived the challenge, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York won her primary as well. In Utah, U.S. Representative John Curtis defeated a Trump-backed challenger for Mitt Romney's open Senate seat. Ted Lindner, Fox News.
Supreme Court issues opinions today, tomorrow, and Friday, including whether former President Trump is immune from federal prosecution over efforts to overturn the 2020 election.
Justices are also weighing a federal obstruction charge that hundreds of January 6th offendants are facing. The court is also expected to rule on a challenge to Idaho's strict abortion law and how far cities and states can go in prohibiting the homeless from sleeping in public spaces.
Fox's Jared Halpern in Washington. America's listening to Fox News.
News brought to you by Sioux Falls Implant and Sedation Dentistry. They fix your teeth while you sleep.
Kello News Time 6:31. I'm Joe Bowman in the Kello.com News Center. The recount of 3 Republican primary races in Minnehaha County is complete, and none of the races flipped. In one of the races, incumbent County Commissioner Dean Karski actually widened his lead after the recount board opted to count 132 absentee ballots that had originally been rejected. South Dakota lawmakers are grappling with ways to protect children as they navigate social media and online resources. Legislators began discovering the complexity of the issue as they held their first summer study hearing last week. State Education Secretary Dr. Joe Graves shared some of his experiences gained while he was superintendent of the Mitchell School District. He offered a stark warning about smartphones in the classroom.
I'm coming to the conclusion that probably that's not going to work. I do think there are some really good solutions out there. To me personally, I'm not sure a smartphone belongs in the hands of a teenager, period. It's certainly not a preteen.
Those concerns don't stop with primary and secondary education. There are also concerns at the college level. We'll take a look at those next hour. A Sisseton man has been sentenced to 10 years in prison for the death of a child back in 1992. Last November, 57-year-old Jay Adams pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter in the 30-year-old cold case. According to court documents, Adams admitted to killing a child in the Lake Traverse Indian Reservation using blunt force trauma in the heat of passion. And Interstate 29 in southeast South Dakota is back in business. The north and southbound lanes on I-29 from exit 26 down to exit 2 are now open. I-29 was closed in that area due to record-high floodwaters from the Big Sioux River. Motorists are warned there may still be standing water along the shoulders of the roadway. From the Kello.com News Center, I'm Joe Bowman.
The news never stops. Kello News Talk 1320 107.9.
Partly cloudy skies today for the Sioux Falls area. Our high temperature at 81 with a north wind at 5 to 10. For tonight, low around 60. There could be some scattered hits of rain toward daybreak. Tomorrow, a good chance of scattered shower and thunderstorm activity with a high of 76. More scattered rain tomorrow night. That's the latest on your weather from the Storm Center at Kibble-Land TV. I'm meteorologist Brian Carstens.
The only thing that is constant.
All right, we've got a few minutes here before we
all day long. Kello News Talk
get going again.
107.9 and Kello.com.
So again, there just are not a lot of trending stories this morning. It depends on the day. Some days I've got more that I can actually share. I mean, I wind up running out of time.
Now, the music industry sees this as outright theft, and the lawsuits.
Some days like today, you know, when there are elections, a lot of those stories wind up trending, and they wind up trending prior to the election and then after the election, and so. Unless you live in those areas, you really don't necessarily care what the election results were. I mean, it's big news, okay. And I think we can cover those pretty quickly in a few sentences, and you know the big things, and then you move on.
So far, it's been the biggest intellectual property theft in history.
I think going to be interesting to see what happens with this presidential debate tomorrow.
Are you tired of juggling?
I'm planning to watch.
Your business? You don't have to.
Normally, I don't. In the evening, it's hard for me because I go to bed just insanely early some nights. So when you start a debate at 7 p.m., I'm like, that's normally when I'm closing my eyes, you know. But I plan on watching. I want to see how Joe Biden handles himself and how he does.
With SimpliSafe, you can easily improve efficiency by consolidating all of your major business processes.
turning back for some live copy here. There's a lot of shelving storage area behind me. So
NetSuite has extended its one-of-a-kind flexible financing program for just a few more weeks. Now, I don't want you to miss out. Head to netsuite.com/Cam right now. That's netsuite.com/Cam. NetSuite, everything you need, all in one place. netsuite.com/Kim.
The Kim Commando Show, live Saturday mornings at 9. Kello News Talk 1320 107.9.
this is a crazy story involving this.
Financing programs available to Sioux Falls locations.
It's from Texas. This teenager was found covered in dried blood after he crashed his pickup truck while intoxicated, and he's refusing to talk about what happened. So he wound up being arrested. Police found him and his vehicle covered in dried blood. So they're trying to figure out, who does the blood belong to? Does it belong to this teenager? Or, wow. And the serious, that situation with Princess Anne is more serious than had been reported yesterday. She's 73 years old. She's the sister of the king. And she apparently was injured by a horse. Now we're learning. That's why she was rushed to the hospital. All right, here we go.
You'll have the smartest smartphone in town.
Kello News Talk 1320 107.9.
Hey, a quick word from my friends at Washington Crossing. Washington Crossing is Sioux Falls' premier independent living community. And I've been sharing their story for a long time. The folks at Washington Crossing understand that retirement is about a lot more than just living comfortably. It's about making meaningful connections, building friendships. And Washington Crossing tries to encourage that. They, socializing, and this is why they do scheduled outings, things like the sculpture walk downtown. They take casino trips, community potlucks, and a lot more. Washington Crossing, I'll say it's quite beautiful. They've got state-of-the-art amenities that include a fitness center, a game room, a postal center, a really nice chapel. Also, computer and email access is standard at Washington Crossing. And their gourmet dining room is really, it's my favorite. I think it's one of the gems of the place. It's just beautiful. It's like story and a half with raised windows, so you get sunshine streaming in, lots of natural light, beautiful stone fireplace, makes it a great place for, folks love meeting for coffee then in the morning. Washington Crossing is also locally owned. They have been in Sioux Falls for a long time. They take a lot of pride in providing clean, comfortable retirement living to people that want to be surrounded by friends in a quiet environment. That's exactly what you'll find at Washington Crossing. So give Todd a call today and schedule a tour. He would love to show you around. Call him today, 605-271-9273. That's 605-271-9273, and you'll be talking to Todd. You can also log on to their website for photos, floor plans, pricing. They don't hide behind their pricing. They want you to know, in fact, it's so much more affordable than you think. You'll find that at WashingtonCrossingRC.com. It's Washington Crossing Retirement Community, premier retirement living at a great value. "20 minutes before 7, partly cloudy and 68. This hour of the Greg Belfrage Show, brought to you by the Window Shop of Mitchell, offering custom windows starting at $99 a month.
What's trending now?
Add them on Facebook.
Let the tweeting begin. The hashtag does that. News and views.
Well, it was election day in a number of states yesterday. Primary day in South Carolina, New York, Utah, Colorado. So the most high-profile primary yesterday was in New York's 16th district, where Representative Jamal Bowman lost. He lost to centrist Democrat George Latimer, and Jamal Bowman was part of the squad. He's been part of the squad with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and others. And did you hear him screeching and carrying on the other day? It was just like, wow. And I again, I just kind of sit back and you look at those events and you go, is that how I would choose to behave if I were days away from, from a primary election? Man, he's out there just screeching at the top of his lungs, cursing, which he has apologized for, but he loses to centrist Democrat George Latimer. So Jamal Bowman is out. As we talk about the squad, however, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez won her primary. And then in Colorado, we had Representative Lauren Boebert, who won, and she actually had moved to a different district. So she was running a different district than in Colorado, but she won her primary to replace Representative Ken Buck. He's retiring, so she'll replace him for a full term. Again, Jamal Bowman losing his primary yesterday, and it marks the first defeat of an incumbent member of the squad. And this is a piece from Yahoo News, which is generally pretty leftist. It's I want to rephrase that. Left of center, certainly. Left of center, far left of center. But Yahoo News says this marks the first defeat of an incumbent member of the ultra-liberal squad and a major setback for the country's once ascendant activist left. And you wonder then, they've had, I think they have had a number of setbacks. You look at the violence that's gone on in college campuses and then they're out there, defending, what we've seen, and it's just really disturbing. So I don't think it's any surprise, certainly not to me. And you've got to believe I guess I always try to look at things a little bit from the viewpoint of folks on Main Street. What's the Main Street view of some of this? And this screeching, and it's just, I don't know about you, and I'm somebody who can be prone to shout, as you well know. I just find it tiresome, man. It just wears me down. Also, I mentioned Representative Lauren Boebert, so she won pretty easy victory yesterday. She defeated 5 other competitors in Colorado's 4th congressional district primary. So the Associated Press called the race for Boebert last night at around 9:30. All right, let's take a look at other stories that are trending this morning outside of the elections yesterday. Judge Juan Merchan, who, as you know, is the judge over Donald Trump's Manhattan trial, lifted parts of the gag order against Donald Trump. So Trump had been barred from talking about witnesses, jurors, potential jurors, talking about the counsel from the prosecution, talking about all these things, related family members. So the judge lifted parts of the gag order yesterday, kind of meaning that Trump can move forward with that. Not that the Trump will, but the revised order will not prevent Trump from criticizing the case or speaking about Judge Merchan or Alvin Bragg, but it will keep in place restrictions on his statements about individual prosecutors, court personnel, so on. So he's partially lifted the gag order against Donald Trump, and Trump, as you know, was found guilty in Manhattan. Planned Parenthood says it'll spend about $40 million ahead of this November's elections trying to bolster President Joe Biden and congressional Democrats. And so they're betting that voters are angry about Republican-led efforts to further restrict access to abortion, and that it could be, in some places around the country, might be a big issue. So I think they're targeting 8 different states: Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, as well as North Carolina. So they're trying to, this will be a big issue. They're trying to reach voters with volunteer and paid canvassing programs, as well as they're doing some digital TV and mail advertising as well. But that is a big issue for supporters of abortion who think this will be a major issue coming up. We can expect President Joe Biden is going to hit that issue fairly hard coming up during the debate tomorrow night. Also, while we're talking about this, and this story has been out there the last few days, and it's been trending, and this is just, days ahead of the first debate, the president and Vice President Kamala Harris used the anniversary of the Dobbs decision to go after Donald Trump on the issue of abortion rights. And again, I just don't think, what stones have you got to throw at him? Okay, he turned it back to he appointed justices who turned it back to the states. Trump didn't do that. The Supreme Court did that. They turned it back to the states and said, you make that choice. If you live in a pro-life state like South Dakota, you want to restrict access to abortion, you can do that. If you live in a state that wants to give greater latitude when it comes to abortion, you can do that. It's up to the state legislatures to decide. But we have got people running around with their hair on fire, absolutely hysterical, like it's the end. And again, I think the common sense perspective is, wow, I just get tired of all of the screaming and the shouting at the top of their lungs. It just, maybe that's just me, but I just find it so incredibly tiresome. This is an incredible story about a teenager who was found covered in dried blood after he crashed his pickup truck. So police wound up arresting him. He's 18 years old. He's covered in dried blood and refuses to talk about what happened, where it came from, whose blood it is. Don't know. So this is an 18-year-old guy arrested, charged with driving under the influence. And police say they immediately noticed that he was covered in a large amount of dried blood, which was also splattered across his vehicle. And streaks of blood could be seen along the side of his white pickup truck. Where did that come from? What happened? You really don't know. Officers said they found dried blood also on the inside of the pickup. So they asked where the blood came from and how'd you wind up covered in blood? And he wouldn't talk about it. So he refused to say. So investigators, at least this story that is trending, again, trending stories generally run behind of actual events. You know, it takes a few days for these stories to get out there and start picking up steam, start trending. So as to where that story is at right now, but that's the story that's trending. Also, we've got the mayor of Oakland who gave a speech this week on Monday. It was the first time she has spoken out since her home was raided by the FBI, and she cried as she talked about it. She claimed to be the target of a campaign by radical right-wing forces. They're trying to undermine her, and she said, I want to be crystal clear. I've done nothing wrong. I can tell you with confidence that this investigation is not about me, she said as she was wiping tears from her eyes. There are a lot, again, she's trying to blame it on right-wingers. There are a lot of questions regarding her and what she was, you know, she has said she had promised to be 100% transparent, but she's unwilling to take questions. Doesn't that kind of fly in the face of being 100% transparent if you refuse to answer questions? It's the mayor of Oakland has got some serious troubles, and there's more. And now you've got people in her office who are now stepping down, resigning. They want nothing to do with what's going on. It's beginning of the end is the way that it certainly, there's an appearance that it's the beginning of the end for her. Also, this is outside the political vein, interesting. China had launched a lunar probe, which is now returned to Earth, and they have taken the first samples from the far side of the moon. Again, this is their probe returned with rock and soil samples yesterday, landed in the Inner Mongolian region in northern China. And Chinese scientists say they expect the return samples to include 2.5 million year old volcanic rock, other material, and they're hoping then that this will answer questions about the dark side of the moon. And it's the first time that we have seen a probe to the dark side. So it is now returned. A couple of other stories that are trending this morning. And again, there are not a lot of trending news stories at freespoke.com this morning, largely because a lot of it is political news. We had a number of states yesterday that had primary elections. And so stories that are trending generally are in advance of the election. So they're outdated stories that are just now trending, as well as recap stories of what actually transpired. And excuse me, again, if you're not, if you don't live in some of these states where the primary elections were taking place, it's just not relevant to a lot of us. So there are not a lot of stories. There are a few news stories that are trending this morning. Also, the Texas Rangers are the only Major League Baseball team that do not have a Pride Night. And that story is trending, that the Texas Rangers, the only Major League Baseball team that do not have a Pride Night. And so there's a story at AOL talking about, this is a man who works at the Resource Center. It's one of the leading LGBTQ organizations in the Dallas area. And he says he's working with the Texas Rangers. And he was, the Rangers are the only Major League Baseball team without a Pride Night, and they're holding fast. They have been the only team for several years. And when the Rangers are questioned about it, they cite their work then with the Resource Center. And so June, of course, is Pride Month. And this guy from the Resource Center has been working with the Rangers, said, you know, it's a complicated relationship. As someone who grew up watching the Rangers, as someone who has gone to games since the 1970s, some of my biggest and best memories are going to games at the old Arlington Stadium with my late grandfather, listening to games on the radio in his backyard. It pains me that this remains an issue after all these years. I have a difficult time with that. So either you have got to participate in Pride Night, or, I mean, that is a little bit, how do you explain that? And again, LGBTQ plus become more than just gays and lesbians and so on. Now it's that we talked about this on the show many times. You know, that list just kept growing for the longest time. More and more people were being added to that list. And so if the Texas Rangers choose not to celebrate Pride Month, what's the problem? How does that diminish your enjoyment of the baseball game? That's what I don't understand. And that's a look at the stories trending this morning in Belf's News Gallery. Coming up, we'll have news headlines from Joe Bowman on the way. This hour of the Greg Belfrage Show brought to you by the Window Shop of Mitchell, offering custom windows starting at $99 a month, partly cloudy and 68. And you're listening to the Greg Belfrage Show on Kello.
News you can use. News that affects you. Kello News Talk 1320, 107.9.
We don't just meet expectations, we exceed them. We don't just follow best practices.
All right, my friend, I want to thank you for being here this morning. That concludes our live broadcast of the Greg Belfrage Show for today. Great to have you along. Please smash that like button. I would really appreciate it. Hit the like button. Share it with like-minded people. Very much appreciated if you would do that for me. Otherwise, coming up now, for those of you who subscribe, follow me on YouTube, I will do a post show after the show, 9:30 Central Time this morning. I'll do a very brief kind of recap. And I'll do that coming up a little bit later this morning after the program this morning. So I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for following the Greg Belfrage Show. Take care until tomorrow, and may God bless. I hate poking you in the eye this way.